The 90s era band Candlebox seemed to spring out of nowhere. Hailing from Seattle, the band was largely shunned by the musicians from the city, who claimed they were riding their coattails. Formed in 1990, the band was made up of vocalist Kevin Martin, guitarist Peter Klett, bassist Barty Martin, and drummer Scott Mercado, and the quartet spent little time making a name for themselves, as by 1992, they were playing some of the biggest clubs in Seattle. The following year, they signed a deal with Maverick Records, which was Madonna's label, and released their multi-platinum self-titled debut record the same year. Despite the band's success, critics lambasted the group, and the media largely ignored them compared to their peers, some of which they outsold. Within a year of releasing their debut record, the members of Candlebox were playing venues like Madison Square Garden, opening for Rush, and it created a good amount of resentment against the band from other musicians. Today, let's take a look at the Rockstars who didn't like Candlebox. Perhaps no person had as much venom reserved for the group as Courtney Love. It was following Candlebox's success that Courtney Love gave various press interviews blasting the band for riding her husband, Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain's coattails. Love would tell author Mark Yarm in the book Everybody Loves Our Town, nobody cared for Candlebox, it seemed fake. Guy Osri signed 2 bands that made money out of 48. He signed to Maverick. The other one was Alanis Morissette. Candlebox was just sort of gay, but Alanis was just a safe version of what I had been doing, and it really infuriated me. Guitarist Peter Klett would say in the same book, and I quote, "She hated us for the same reasons all the other a-holes did. They couldn't handle the fact that we were successful, and Courtney Love didn't deserve squat, man. The only reason she ever became anything is because of her husband. Period, end of story." Meanwhile, Candlebox frontman Kevin Martin was a little more complimentary towards Courtney Love, telling Yarm, "I had a lot of respect for her, and I love her records, and I still do." The band would, however, have a little bit of fun with the feud when they appeared on the cover of local Seattle magazine The Rocket, with each member dressing up as Courtney Love with blonde wigs and slips along with tiaras and makeup, with the headline reading, "Candlebox, the boys with the most cake." Love would end up getting her hands on the magazine and was extremely upset. Charles S. Cross, who wrote the article, recalled to Yarm how he was staying at a hotel one night in Portland, Oregon, and Love tracked him down and threatened to blow up his toilet. Meanwhile, frontman Kevin Martin would tell Yarm how the band was out on tour in Chicago 2 months after the story ran, and Love called a friend of Martin she knew and somehow wrangled her way into calling Martin and cussing him out. Martin would recall, "She just went off on me for 2 hours. She was losing her effing mind. I think she was pretty well loaded. How dare you? You guys are posers," and other BS she'd say. Now, everything that came out of her mouth went back to Kurt and how we were riding her coattails. I even made a point to her about how you were using your husband's name. This isn't about your husband. We don't sound anything like Nirvana. Apart from opening for Rush in 1994, Candlebox soon were headlining their own shows alongside the Flaming Lips. The Flaming Lips frontman Wayne Coyne wasn't a fan of Candlebox and was taken aback by the group's immediate success, with the frontman telling author Mark Yarm, "Candlebox wasn't just a nail in the coffin for grunge. To me, they arrived as the coffin for grunge." We toured with them for 3 months at the end of 1994 and at the beginning of that phase where they were playing 4,000 to 5,000 people a night. And by the end, they were playing giant arenas, hockey rinks for the most part, that hold 10,000 people, and they're selling out a couple nights in a row. Coyne would go on to say, "We saw the clumsiness of their show, and everything about it seemed, damn, was this too much too soon? Candlebox really had nothing he'd remember." Perhaps one of the reasons Candlebox didn't get a lot of love from their fellow musicians from Seattle was because they were nearly 5 years younger than the members of bands like Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and Nirvana. Frontman Kevin Martin would tell interviewer Grungery.hu that he was 16 years old working at a shoe store in Seattle, alongside Chris Cornell's wife and manager at the time, Susan Silver, whose management office happened to be connected to the same building. It was at that shoe store Martin met Alice in Chains members Lane Staley and Jerry Cantrell, as well as Mother Love Bone's Andrew Wood. He would also become friends with Chris Cornell. Despite being friendly and becoming acquaintances with these musicians, later on in Candlebox's career, they wouldn't play any shows with these bands or even be offered to go out on tour with them. Martin would tell the publication, "All of a sudden we played this one show with Sweetwater and it was totally sold out and we destroyed the place. Then everyone was like, we love Candlebox. So it was like the airplane came and dropped us off in the city. That's the mentality of Seattle. And by the way, had Chris ever said in an interview, I've known Kevin since he was 16 years old and they're a legit Seattle band, or Lane Staley or any of those guys had ever backed us up, it would have been a different story, but that's never happened and it's never going to happen." That's the kind of animosity that city brewed, which is really stupid because it was so small. Candlebox would end up replacing Alice in Chains, who dropped out of Woodstock 94, and opening for Metallica the same summer. Despite getting opportunities due to Alice in Chains' internal turmoil, drummer Scott Mercado revealed that he was actually friends with the band's drummer Sean Kinney. But despite their friendship, Kinney was honest about his distaste for Candlebox, with Mercado recalling to author Mark Yarm, "He told me, I like your style, you're a great drummer, I just don't like your singer, I don't like your music." I admired Sean for saying that, as opposed to talking about us behind my back. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe. We'll see you again in Rock and Roll Stories. Take care.